Welcome to the fifth in UTO Training's ongoing series on exploring instructional design theories and their applications. In this session, we will discuss Gestalt theory of psychology and its impact on learning theory. According to the Gestalt theory, also commonly known as the law of simplicity, every stimulus is perceived by humans in its most simple form. The theory comes from a school of psychology founded in the 20th century that provided a foundation for the modern study of perception. Gestalt theory emphasizes that the whole of anything is greater than its parts in isolation. The theory was devised in 1922 by Max Wertheimer, Kurt Koffka, and Wolfgang Kohler. Max Wertheimer was born in Prague in 1880. After obtaining his PhD in psychology from the University of Würzburg in 1904, he taught at several universities in Germany. He eventually ended up teaching at the New School for Social Research in New York, where he remained until 1943. Kurt Koffka was born in Berlin in 1886. He earned his PhD from the University of Berlin in 1808, and then in 1927, after immigrating to the United States, he became a professor at Smith College in Massachusetts. He had a great interest in the laws that govern the human perception of the environment, as well as interpretation and developmental psychology. Wolfgang Kohler was born in Estonia in 1887 and was an eminent psychologist and phenomenologist. He earned his PhD from the University of Berlin in 1909. He met Wertheimer and Koffka at the University of Frankfurt. In the 1930s, he immigrated to the United States and became a professor at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania until 1967. In their study of perception, the three concluded three things. Learners were not passive, but rather active. Learners do not just collect information as is, but instead actively process and restructure data in order to understand it. Factors such as past experience, needs, attitudes, and one's present situation can affect their perception. Gestalt theory was the initial cognitive response to behaviorism. It emphasizes the importance of sensory wholes, the complete picture, and the dynamic nature of visual perception. The main focus of the theory is grouping. And the entire theory emphasizes the belief that the whole of anything is greater than the sum of its parts. Gestalt in German means the shape of an entity's complete form. Thus, the operational principle of the brain is holistic and has a self-organizing inclination. In modern German, the word Gestalt means the way a thing has been placed or put together. There is no exact equivalent in English. Form and shape are the usual translations. In psychology, the word is often interpreted as pattern or configuration. Gestalt psychologists were the first to provide a phenomenological description of what happens when people face a problematic situation. They identified two processes: reproductive thinking, which consists of a mechanical application of chains of associations which have already been learned and reinforced by experience and habits, and productive thinking, a process involving the creation of something new. They explained that productive thinking starts from a deep understanding of the phenomenal structure of a problem. This structure will suggest the solution. According to the Gestalt psychologists, the way we form our perceptions are guided by certain principles or laws. These principles or laws determine what we see or what we make of things or situations. The factors that determine the principles of grouping, also known as the law of organization, are proximity, similarity, closure, and simplicity. Let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Elements that are closer together will be perceived as coherent objects. Elements are typically grouped together based on their immediacy, or proximity. Elements that look similar will be perceived as part of the same form. Elements similar to one another tend to be grouped together, similarity. We tend to fill the gaps or close the figures we perceive. We enclose a space by completing a contour and ignoring gaps in the figure. Elements are typically grouped together if they are a part of an entity. Closure. Individuals have the tendency to continue contours whenever elements of the pattern establish an implied direction. This is also known as the law of continuity. Elements should be organized into simplistic figures based on their symmetry, smoothness, and regularity. Simplicity. The primary goal of Gestalt theory is to encourage the brain to view not just the whole, but also the parts that make up that whole. For example, when someone is looking at a tree, they are not just seeing the tree. They also see the leaves, the branches, and the trunk. The whole and the sum of its parts are two entirely different things, and learning can be achieved if learners are able to cognitively process how parts can make up this whole. The main principles of Gestalt theory in learning are the following. First, teachers should encourage their students to discover the relationship of the elements that make up a problem. Second, incongruities, gaps, or disturbances are essential stimuli in the learning process. Finally, educational instruction should be based on the laws of organization that we've already discussed. Lewin further developed Gestalt theory through the development of the field study. He was a German-American psychologist who was known as one of the modern pioneers of social, organizational, and applied psychology in the United States. Lewin is often recognized as the founder of social psychology and was one of the first to study group dynamics and organizational development, two developments very useful in designing courses around learning outcomes. He concluded, an individual has inner and outer forces that affect his or her perceptions. Inner forces include motivation, attitude, and feelings. Outer forces may include the attitude and behaviors of the instructor and of fellow students. Gestalt psychology is focused on the experience of contact that occurs in the here and now. It takes an interest in the complexities of the experience without negating anything but accepting and amplifying all that emerges. It stimulates learning as experience, and the experience is a source of learning. Knowledge is conceived as a continuous organization or rearrangement of information according to needs, purpose, and meaning. Autonomy and freedom of the student is stimulated by the instructor, also referred to as the process of freedom of inquiry. The contact experience between the instructor and student is given value, an authentic meeting based on sharing ideas and perceptions. In a learning environment, the Gestalt theory applies to problem solving and perception. However, it can be used in all aspects of education. The Gestalt theory of learning focuses on the mind's perceptive abilities. It is useful as a behavioral tool because it enables an instructor to channel a student's energy into thinking of an item or subject as part of a whole. By thinking of components and breaking down a situation or problem, the theory enables a more psychological process to take place, and over time will broaden a student's mind into thinking about the sum of the parts that make up the whole. In our next session, we will examine how to apply 7 popular instructional design theories during course creation. I hope you can join us. For questions about this training or suggestions and questions on other training, you can reach me at christopher.nigel.lee@asu.edu.